Good afternoon, ladies and gentlemen. It is 2 o'clock on Wednesday afternoon. This is a meeting of the House Agriculture and Natural Resources Committee. We are now in session. Clerk, call the roll.
Representatives Cochran. Here. Cooper. Darby. Here. Doggett. Hardaway. Holsey. Here. Hurt. Potts. Reedy. Here. Rudder. Here. Shaw. Here. Todd. Here. Travis. Wright. Here. Vice Chairman Grills. Here. Chairman Halford.
Here.
Mr. Chairman, you have a quorum.
Thank you, Mr. Clerk. Anyone with personal orders, anything they want to bring up today? Seeing none, we will move on into our calendar. Representative Powers, you are recognized on House Bill 90. Have a motion and a second. I believe we have an amendment.
Yes, we do. Thank you.
4923 is what I have, Dennis.
Sorry, I had the wrong number over here. Yes, 4923.
4923.
Thank you. Yes.
I hear a motion and a second on the amendment. Have a motion and a second on the amendment. You may proceed, sir.
All right. Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee. This is the Surface Coal Mining Primacy Act. A couple of years ago, actually in 2018, I sponsored that act. And what it is presently, the Office of Surface Mining and Enforcement regulates surface mining in Tennessee. Only 23 states, of the 23 states that have coal mining, Tennessee is the only one without a state-regulated program. In 2018, as I was talking about before, it directed the governor to pursue state oversight of Surface Mining Control and Reclamation Act, frequently referred to as primacy. The General Assembly voted to adopt the act, now published as Public Chapter 839. So the 2018 Act laid the foundation for the state to obtain primacy and move us toward establishing a state rather than a federal surface coal mining program. Since that time, however, the administration sought informal review of the 2018 Act from OSMA, and the feedback is clear. Changes must be made in order for Tennessee to receive primacy. So to receive primacy, the Office of Surface Mining Reclamation Enforcement must determine in their discretion that our program is at least as stringent as the federal law and that the state has the financial stability, capability to administer and operate the program. To advance the goal of the 2018 Act, this bill will incorporate the feedback received from OSMRE by aligning the program more closely with the federal, they call it SMACRA statute. This alignment is most efficient and expedient path to the best position Tennessee to receive approval of and maintain a state surface coal mining program. And with that, Mr. Chairman, I'll be glad to answer any questions, and I renew my motion.
Questions for Chairman Powers, Representative Halsey?
Thank you. Is that what the amendment says, that we're aligning with the federal government's?
Yes, that was the whole purpose of it, to get in alignment with that and make sure that we were going by their regulations, and TDEC has been working on this for a long time to make sure of that.
Representative Halsey. Others with questions for the sponsor on the amendment. Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Chairman Powers, you said that the state could do this, but they had to be as stringent as the EP or the federal government. Specific, not necessarily super specifically, but what are we going to do that's going to be more stringent or on the miners than the EPA would or the federal government would?
Okay. Representative Powers.
Yeah, and actually, what I meant to say, and I'm not sure if I made that, we're supposed to be at least as stringent as federal law. So we have to come up at least the minimum amount of their guidelines that they have. If we have anything that, if we're looking at federal versus state, we have to be at least as stringent as the federal law is. If the state guidelines are lower than that. And there's a lot of things, and I've got the department here if you need to be more specific on a particular item that we need to go over.
Representative Grills.
I don't know, thank you, Mr. Chairman. I don't know that that's necessary. I just want to be careful to make sure that the state does not put more burdens on minors than the federal government, because we all know that the federal government likes to get as hard on people as they possibly can.
I agree.
And I want to do everything we can to have as much industry and be as welcome in Tennessee as we possibly can. So thank you for this. And obviously, Tennessee can do a better job of running anything than the federal government. So it's definitely a step in the right direction.
That's right. Thank you.
Anyone else?
Thank you.
Seeing none, we'll be voting to add the amendment to House Bill 90. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. The amendment goes on the bill. We're back on the bill as amended. Representative Powers, do you have more?
No, just that we've been working on this for several years and working with TDEC and the federal government office, OSM, Office of Surface Mining, and we think we've got it now. We've got everything together with them, and so we look forward to state of Tennessee regulating its own coal mining industry, and we have some people that are looking to come to our state, and we want to welcome them here, and it'll create some jobs and for our state. So with that, I'll renew my motion.
Questions for Representative Powers on the bill as amended? Seeing none, without objection, Representative Hardaway, did you ask to be recognized?
Yes, sir. Real
You're
briefly, have you had any input or response from the advocacy groups for environmental and conservation issues like Sierra Club?
Representative Powers.
We did earlier, and I think we before we had the subcommittee. I haven't had anything lately, but originally, and when I did the bill back in 2018, we had some issues with them, but we were able to work all that out. I don't think they're ever going to be good with the coal mining thing, but what we're doing with the reclamation, we have the technology now to where we can go into an old coal mine, like a strip mine, and they have the technology to go in and get coal out and then reclaim it, because it was never reclaimed until the 1972 Act. So it's actually environmentally, it's going to be better. It's going to clean up. If you've ever been to a reclaimed mine, and I have, but you can't even tell there's been a coal mine there. So what it does is the old mines that were left, the strip mines that were left abandoned or orphan mines, we're going to go back in and be able to reclaim them, get the coal, get more coal out, reclaim them, and actually help the environment.
Okay. Thank you, sir. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Other questions for Representative Powers? Seeing none, are you ready to vote? All in favor of sending House Bill 90 to GovOps will say aye. Aye. All opposed say no. Ayes have it. You go to GovOps, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Next on our calendar is House Bill 813. Representative Lafferty, you are recognized. Have a motion and a second on the bill. I believe we have an amendment. $5403.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. That is the number I have in front of me,
I have a motion and a
5403.
second on the amendment. Have a motion and a second on the amendment. You may proceed to.
Thank you, and thank you, committee. A lot of you may recognize this from last year. This is one of the bills that we passed through and ended up getting COVIDed by the Senate. We're back to open up opportunities for people, urban, suburban, rural, to go ahead and produce at their home foods and food products that they can then turn and sell through a third-party distributor. That is the big thing that we're looking to do here, is to make it possible for someone that is producing locally sourced foods in their homes, give them an easier opportunity to, instead of having to be the cook and the salesman, let them be the cook and let the salesman take care of the sales part of it. I'd be glad to take any questions.
Questions for the sponsor on Amendment 5403? Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Are you going to be doing any producing, Mr. Chairman, yourself? What are you going to be distributing?
I will not be producing anything. Nobody, there's one dish that I cooked and I cook well, and then everything else, if it's not grilled, I don't know how to do it.
I thought sure you was going to be cooking. I just want to find out.
Anything else, Representative Shaw? Thank you. Representative Grills.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And Chairman Lafferty, I want to commend you for this. I know the effort you put last year and just the concept of life, liberty, and the pursuit of happiness that you adhere to, and every time you make a decision, every time you put a bill up. And I believe this is another opportunity where we see the pursuit of happiness here in front of us and the individuals that have the opportunity that they may not otherwise. But anyhow, thank you so much for just your commitment to these type of issues.
Thank you for your kind words.
Representative Lafferty.
Oh, thank you for your kind words.
Representative Cochran.
Well, he took the words right out of my mouth, but I just wanted to say I like any bill that sets people free, and there's a heavy dose of freedom in this, and just appreciate you also. I'm a big supporter, and we'll sign on.
Other questions for the sponsor? We are on the amendment, so we will be voting on Amendment 5403. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. The amendment goes on the bill. We're back on the bill as amended. Representative Lafferty.
I don't, thank you.
Question's been called on House Bill 813 as amended. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. You are headed to Finance, Ways, and Means.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Thank you, committee.
Next, we have House Bill 887 by Representative Calfee. You are recognized, sir. Have a motion and a second on the bill. I believe we have an amendment on this bill.
Yes, sir. The amendment is 5221, I believe, prior to subcommittee.
We have a motion and a second on the amendment. Would you like to explain the amendment, sir?
Yes, sir, it makes the bill. We had some problems here a year or two ago about the commercial outfitters with kayaks, paddle boards, and canoes and that, blocking up the public boat ramps. So a lot of them have decided they'd like to operate in state parks. And the state park system is going to come up with the rules and the fee schedule, and that'll come through GovOps at some point. And the paddleboard, kayaking, canoeing, tubing, so forth, and then other things that will be addressed in that. And I made a boo-boo in sub. I thought it would cover concession stands such, but it'd be things like rock climbing and some of those things, and it'll help the state parks become self-sufficient.
Questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll be voting to add the amendment to the bill. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. The amendment goes on the bill. We are back on the bill as amended. You are recognized. Question's been called on the bill. Without objection, we're voting on House Bill 887 as amended. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. The ayes have it. You are headed to GovOps. Sir.
Thank you, Chairman and committee, and I won't have to face Ms. Beatty's wrath.
What that mean? Next on our calendar is House Bill 871 by Representative Campbell. You are recognized. We have a motion and a second on the bill. I believe there is an amendment on this bill.
Yes, sir, Mr. Chairman. Representative Cochran has an amendment coded 006674 that makes the bill.
I have a motion and a second on amendment. We're voting to put the amendment on the bill. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. We're back on the bill as amended. Representative Cochran, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And essentially, with my amendment, the big thing that it addressed was to ensure that if there was base zoning in place in a community, and it had been in place for some time, that this particular permit from TDEC does not supersede this, does not supersede that base zoning. So I think in the bill's new form, it protects local control, and it addresses the issue that the sponsor was looking to address. So with that, I will yield. Thank you.
Questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, I'm sorry, Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. I did just previously here that this amendment would make this locally controlled. Is that correct?
Representative Cochran.
Representative Shaw, what this will do is if a community, let's say that there's a particular area that a local government had zoned that entire area for residential use, and in that area there was a quarry. What this amendment does is it makes sure that this TDEC permit, this ARAP permit as they call it, would not supersede that type of zoning. And that was my concern with the original bill, was the way that it was written, that ARAP permit could have superseded local regulations that had been in place for years. And so with base zoning, that local government maintains that type of control. It's not that they have control over the ARAP permits or over the feel of the pit, but it's saying that that TDEC permit cannot supersede a base zoning regulation that was already in place.
Okay.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Now, to the sponsor, was this already zoned before his amendment?
Representative Campbell.
Representative Cochran, my understanding is can you clarify what
Let me go
can you
back to
can you address
Representative
that,
Cochran.
actually? Do you know?
It is my understanding, Representative Shaw, that this particular site was not zoned before. It may have some site-specific zoning addressed or that is related to that site, but site-specific zoning is different than base zoning. So it is my understanding that this particular quarry site was not base zoned at this point.
Representative Shaw.
Thank you. Thank you for that answer. Now back to the sponsor. So now that this amendment is taken care of, tell me exactly now what your legislation is going to do now.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. In addition to what
Well, probably what we need to do, we need to go ahead and get the amendment on, and then we can go back on the bill.
That'd be fine. Yes.
Anyone else with questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Have a question called on the amendment. All in favor of adding amendment 6674, please say aye. All opposed, say no. Ayes have it. We're back on the bill as amended. Now you are recognized, sir.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As Representative Cochran explained, 6674 makes the bill. In addition to the explanation he's given, I will say that TDEC has a well-established process for preventing environmental impacts from fill activities, and stormwater runoff is regulated by TDEC, like at every construction site over 1 acre. And TDEC ensures that appropriate controls are in place to prevent pollution from runoff. Put simply, this bill, as amended, protects the statewide and orderly process for ensuring that these fill projects, which the state wants to encourage, I understand, are able to proceed once the experts have determined that they do not have adverse environmental impacts. Thank you.
Other questions? Representative Halsey.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and thank you for the bill. Great idea. I like it. I just wondered, I had heard some complaining about, does this exempt truck traffic that's overweight? There was some concern about weight limits on some roads and whether this bill exempted that out, and that's all I wanted to find out is if you got an answer to that.
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. May I defer to Cochran on that section of this? He has worked very much on helping us get this legislation to this point. And I don't want to misspeak. I am no expert on this matter.
Representative Cochran.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. Representative Halsey, that is correct. So if you look at Section 1 there, one of the local regulations that the ARAP permit would supersede is prohibitive site-specific zoning conditions, limits on truck traffic, weight limits on or distance limitations. So that's correct. The ARAP permit could supersede a weight limit or a limit on truck traffic. So meaning that they would be allowed.
Representative Halsey. Other questions for the sponsor on the bill as amended? Representative Shaw.
Thank you. What about, is there not a veteran cemetery somewhere nearby this property? And I don't know who would answer that.
Representative Cochran, do you know?
That according to conversations I've had with Representative Mitchell, who I believe this is his district, he has mentioned that there is a veteran cemetery nearby.
Representative Shaw.
And I also had that conversation. I think the concern was you know, the privacy of burying the dead and so forth and so on. And I don't know if this had been addressed. I kind of got this late, and so I don't know if all that's been addressed or not. I would like for someone, if they could, to either sponsor or you to address that.
Representative Cochran.
Well, and I will just address actually just kind of what I got that about 15 minutes ago as well, Representative Shaw. So unfortunately, I don't know the background behind that, but just a very recent conversation that was brought to my attention.
Representative Shaw. We'll go to legal for answer on that. We'll go out of session. You are recognized, sir.
Matt Mundy from Legal. I know you're, Representative Shaw, you're speaking to one specific property, but this is a statewide application, so to answer one of your earlier questions, there would be some quarries or old properties where there would be base zoning and some where there would not be. In the particular case of one that was adjacent to or contiguous with a cemetery, there's a requirement in F1B that in all other ways, the backfill satisfies state law applicable to the fill activity. And I think that also that would loop in the preservation and disturbance of cemeteries and grave sites.
Representative Shaw, is that anyone else for the attorney while we have him here? Seeing none, we'll go back into session. Representative Hardaway, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman, and good afternoon to the sponsor. I started to have questions when I heard questions. And one of the questions I have now is whether this is about a specific site. Is that what gave birth to the legislation?
Representative Campbell.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. And my understanding is that there could be a number of places that this would impact statewide. We have seen Representative Halsey discussed it in subcommittee where you know, we run into these situations where these places aren't getting filled and frankly they don't look all that hot. So this opens up the authority. Now, I do understand that there is one in Mitchell's district. He's made that clear to me that you know, he doesn't like this. Excuse me, but at the same time, I think that the overall impact could be very good, especially seeing that all parties involved with these types of projects have to follow TDEC, they have to follow the permitting process, they have to follow the Water Quality Act. So there's a lot in place already to that regard. So it's definitely a potential statewide issue, could happen in a number of places. I don't have a precise list or quantity of those, but I know that there are several potentials.
Representative Hardaway.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. So I'm kind of gleaning in between the lines there that Representative Mitchell's situation may have inspired the bill.
Representative Campbell.
Mr. Chairman, that situation was brought to my attention later in the process. So Representative Mitchell told me about his concerns and that this would also impact that particular situation. So I really don't know of the origins of the issue itself. So I'll
Anything further, Representative Hardaway?
Yes, sir. Is there anything in the language that allows the local legislative bodies to opt out of any of the bill's dictates?
Representative Cochran. I'm sorry, Representative Campbell.
I liked your first reference on that. Actually, since your amendment makes the bill, will you speak to that point?
Representative Cochran.
Representative Hardaway, So essentially, that local action that would exempt them from that would be if base zoning was already in place. So at the time when this bill is signed into law, if it is signed into law, and there is base zoning, which is a local action taken by that local legislative body. If there's base zoning in place at that point, so let's say there's a quarry site and there's a community around it, and that local government has zoned that area for residential, and in that zoning, in that base zoning map, that quarry is included as a residential, is zoned residential. This ARAP permit that is issued by TDEC could not supersede that base zoning. That is where there would be local input with my amendment.
Representative Hardaway.
Previously, and I will, sorry, Mr. Chairman, previously there was not that protection, and that's what I was concerned about as well. And so that's why I brought this amendment to ensure that there was some local control.
Anything further, Representative Hardaway?
Mr. Chairman, I'm a little bit more confused now that he's clarified it for me. But what I'm not understanding is what prompted the bill and really whether it usurps the local authority. I heard us, the committee, speak to some generalities on conservation and environment issues. But I think an important part of this is community issues which might not specifically fit into conservation and environment issues, but which the local folks, depending on their values, depending upon their zoning, depending upon their strategic plan for the area, they might not be there yet. And this seems to say wherever you've got your long-term planning worked out and your zoning in place, that you're stuck. That from that point on, that the state is pretty much in charge, and there's no way for exemptions at that point. And that disturbs me. So, and you know, there's no bigger environmentalist and conservationist than myself. But usurping the local folks in that manner is a problem for me. So I don't think I can support it unless I can get some assurances on that.
Ladies and gentlemen, I'd like to go out of session again and ask the attorney to give us a little aid here. So we are out of session. Mr. Mundy, you are recognized.
I'll try to offer some clarification. As I understand base zoning regulations, they're basically base zoning regulations are generalized zoning regulations, whether it's residential, commercial, industrial, whatever those ordinances are on a local level. TDEC can't issue a permit to supersede those in issuing a permit for backfilling. That doesn't mean that you can't backfill a quarry within that area that's been zoned. It just means that you have to follow the local ordinances prescribed for that area. Now, if there's no base zoning in place, then these exemptions with respect to truck weight, truck volume, and so forth, they're exempt from those broader local regulations if those exist, if that makes sense. But there's no opt-out provision for the locals. It's just that the provision is really whether the locals already have base zoning in place prior to the effective date of this act.
Representative Hardaway, do you have more for
Yes, sir.
Mr. Mundy?
Yes, sir. And am I correct when assuming
Representative
that
Hardaway, are you directing your question to
to
Mr. Mundy?
legal?
Thank you.
Yes, sir. Am I correct that you're saying that the locals cannot come back and do any zoning changes after this law is in effect? Any zoning changes for this purpose after
Mr.
if
Mundy.
we enact this law?
The base zoning regulations that they would have to comply with would have to be those in effect upon the effective date of this act. So you couldn't overlay the quarry area with the residential zoning ordinance to provide additional restrictions and apply it to a permit that's already been issued.
Representative Hardaway.
Yes, sir. He's summed it up nicely, and that was my fear. Thank you, Mr. Chairman.
Representative Todd.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. As I read in the bill, and I want to make sure this is certain, this only applies to fill or borrow material that's from a state highway construction project.
Representative Todd, hold on just a minute. We need to go back in the
Okay.
session. I apologize.
And I don't know. if
We're
that
back
should be
in session.
legal or
Now
not.
you are recognized.
I wasn't sure if that should be legal or not, quite frankly. So, but my question would be, does this only apply to fill material or borrow material from a state highway project?
Representative Campbell.
That is my understanding based upon the language in 6674.
Other questions for the sponsor on the bill as amended? Seeing none, without objection, we are voting on House Bill 836 as amended. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. Ayes have it. Sir, you are headed to Calendar and Rules.
Thank you.
Next, we have House Bill 1389 by Representative Todd. Have a motion and a second on the bill. Representative Todd, you are recognized.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. We do have an amendment on this, 5042.
That's what I have. Have a motion and a second on the amendment. You are recognized on the amendment.
Thank you, sir. What this does, it basically directs TASSER to do a study on TWRA and TDUC managed state resources that are being used for recreational activities such as paddleboarding, canoeing, and tubing, along with kayaking.
Questions for the sponsor on the amendment? Seeing none, we'll be voting to add the amendment to House Bill 1389. All in favor will say aye.
Aye.
All opposed say no. The amendment is back on the bill. We are now on the bill as amended. Representative Todd, you are recognized.
Question on the bill.
Question's been called on the bill. Without objection, we will be voting on House Bill 1389, Dakota Finance Ways and Means. All in favor will say aye. All opposed say no. Thank you, sir. House Ways and Means.
Number 6 on our list is HJR 139 by Chairman Halford. Chairman Halford, you are recognized. If we can get a motion in a second. We have a motion and a second. There you go, Mr. Chairman.
Thank you, Mr. Chairman. House Joint Resolution 139 is a resolution in support of the recommendations of the Agriculture, Education, and Youth Participation Task Force. The resolution celebrates Tennessee FFA and acknowledges and emphasizes the importance of agriculture education involvement in the National FFA organization to develop students' potential for premier leadership, personal growth, and career success. The task force recommended that the expertise of the Tennessee Department of Agriculture and the Department of Education be combined and that the two departments work together to improve the agriculture education programs and structures focused on FFA and student programs. Mr. Chairman, that's House Bill 139, House Joint Resolution 139.
You've heard the explanation of HJR 139. Do we have any questions for the sponsor? I'll take that as a question on the bill. All in favor, say aye. Aye. Any opposed, same sign. On the calendar and rules. Chairman Halford, while I still have it, nice to see you there.
Ladies and gentlemen, that includes our agenda for today, and in fact, that includes our agenda for the year. And I was in a committee just before transportation, and they were bragging about being the first one to finish, but we did it in a lot less time than they did it. So I'd call that a draw. So anyway, I'd just like to thank all the staff here, the attorneys, Becky, Jeremy, my intern, and the rest of you guys for being here and being such a good attentive committee, and I appreciate all your hard work. So with that said, we are adjourned. And the Agriculture and Natural Resources Full Committee is closed to the call of the chair. Thank you, ladies and gentlemen, for being here. See y'all next year, same time, same station.